Welcome to the GreenFin live stream. I'm Sarah Golden, VP of Climate Tech, and I am joined here by Ashley Orgain, who is the Chief Impact Officer at Seventh Generation. Ashley, welcome.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So to start out, can you tell me a little bit about your climate fingerprint reports?
Sure. So back in 2022, when we were preparing to publish our sustainability report that we actually have been doing since 2004, we are the first in our industry. We stepped back and asked ourselves, what kind of conversation do we need to be having right now to push climate action forward, to have corporates meet the urgency of the moment? And we looked at a couple of different reports. The most intriguing one was a report that was published, the Carbon Bankroll. They were helping companies to understand the impact of their financed emissions on their climate footprint. And what we found was that there are many companies where the impact of their finance emissions is 10x what their rest of their scope 3 might be. So we took it upon ourselves to think about how we can incorporate this methodology into our annual sustainability reporting, widened the lens on the work we were doing around scope 3 to start looking at financed emissions. Similar to the kind of rigor that we put around supply chain emissions, we started looking at what kind of emissions come from the relationships we have with certain banks or insurance providers.
So how do you do that, and how's it going?
We work really closely with key partners, subject matter experts that have developed the type of methodology and the tools for companies to do this type of analysis. The organization that we worked with is Topo, and sharing with them some of our key financial data, which included the top 6 banks that Seventh Generation and in turn our parent company Unilever banks with, the cash that we have at the end of year on the balance sheet, and developed an analysis of, depending upon what banks we were working with and the portfolios that they have, where our cash was being lent out to, and in turn learned that 20 to 30% of that cash that was being lent out to oil and gas industries. So we were able to understand that we were intrinsically involved with those emissions and put together an action plan because it was very inconsistent with the values that we have as a business and wanting to be a climate leader. How can we start divesting and decarbonizing from those types of relationships?
And how can another company follow this path? Like where would you recommend somebody get started if they're wanting to look at the interactions their banks have with problematic investments?
I think developing a baseline is a very important first step. And so working with organizations like Topo to do that kind of analysis so that you can understand what your footprint is. And then from that, developing, plans to bring that knowledge to your treasury team and engaging with your treasury team, which are often, people in the organization that haven't seen themselves as part of the climate solutions that you might be facilitating in the organization. So engaging your finance and your treasury partners in thinking differently about those emissions and those relationships.
I'm curious, when you're thinking about engaging your bank and in no longer having your money going towards some of those problematic investments, are those investments just then coming from other clients of the bank, or are you also pressuring banks to then take that money and put it in potentially solutions or something else?
So you're describing something that's very advanced. We're not yet there. So the methodology that we worked with generated an estimate, and we have a good sense of what that estimate looks like and is equivalent to other scope 3 emissions. And we have, a strategy against some of the biggest actors in our scope 3. And so we're starting to develop that strategy against the financed emissions piece, working with banks. Because we're a wholly owned subsidiary of Unilever, our finances are interconnected. And so it's actually a conversation that we're beginning to have with our parent company, getting them on board with this approach of rethinking and understanding the influence that we can have through our banking relationships on decarbonizing our whole business.
Is it challenging to make the business case for this, either internally or to your parent company, Unilever?
So one thing that we have direct control over is that we own the banking relationship with our foundation at Seventh Generation. We are able to move the money from our foundation in year 1 coming out of the Fingerprints report, and we learned that it reduced our metric tons that year for that specific emission by 90%. So
Mm.
being able to draw that comparison and the opportunity with the rest of the emissions associated with finance is a pretty strong business case, particularly someone that wants to continue to be a climate leader.
Well, Ashley Orgain, thank you so much for your work at Seventh Generation and for joining me today at the live stream of Greenfin.
Thanks so much.